This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
In this adventure, each node that you went to was a separate file. And if you went to a node that didn't exist, then you could write the node as you were playing. You could write the node and say what happened.
This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Max Manowski wrote Adventure, a text adventure game that he released into the public domain to Atari users groups. Later, he modified Adventure and called it Wizard's Revenge, which was published by Atari Program Exchange. Wizard's Revenge was available in the fall 1981 APX catalog, the very first APX catalog. I will read its entry in the catalog. Wizard's Revenge by Max Manowski. Recommended for pre-teenagers to adults, written in BASIC. As a non-believer, you casually make a deprecating remark about wizard believers. Next thing you know, you're transported to a strange and hostile land with nothing but the clothes on your back. It's wizard country, and you'd better hightail it out of there. However, that's easier said than done, as you'll soon discover. This version of Adventure accepts free-form commands, and it contains some randomness from session to session. It's full of traps. Even using the help command can get you into trouble. Review comments. Although a typical adventure, this one contains some sounds, and it has a chatty approach. Be prepared to die many times before you figure out how to avoid all the traps. The user manual is good. Requires Atari Basic Language cartridge. Ordering information. It was available on diskette, which required 24K of RAM and cost $12.95. It was APX catalog number 20054. After we had this interview, Max retyped Wizard's Revenge from an old printout and sent it to me. There's more information about that in an Atari Age thread, which is in the show notes. This interview took place May 27th, 2016.
I was in the Navy. I got into a special program, and in the 60s, I went to the factory school for the PDP-8 as a computer tech. And that was the start of my computer career. At that time, we were using punched paper tape for input. It was, we had 4K of RAM. It was 12-bit RAM. And at that time, I thought that was plenty for anybody.
Sure.
And I started programming in assembly, and eventually started programming on that computer in Focal, which I didn't use very much, but most of the programming was in assembly in those days. At that time, I knew that eventually I was going to have a computer of my own once I could afford it. And the first computer that I had was the Sphere, which was a kit, and which I talked with somebody who had worked at the factory, and his first question was, "Did you ever get it to work?" And my answer was, "Well, it worked right off the bat." And he said that I was the only person that he'd ever talked to that got one of those to work. And then eventually, I got it. I was working primarily as an electronic tech in the Navy, and that's that. So I got my teching part done on both sides early. Then I eventually got the Atari, which was my first, what I considered my first real practical computer.
Nice. Did you get an Atari 400 or 800? Do you remember?
I had, I believe, 3 different ones. I think I started with the 400, went to the 800, and then I believe it was the 1200 or something like that was next. And then there was one more version of that one, and that was, I think, was my last one. I stuck with it because of the 68,000 chip, because it was so much easier to program. And eventually, when the PCs started going They used to have a 64K limit on what you could address directly in blocks, and then they overcame that, and then that's when I switched over finally to the PC.
Okay.
At that time, and I was trying to think of which came first, but I'm not sure. I got a job working for it was a think tank actually that was going to be developing a new product, and we were using the 68,000 series microcontrollers. And I was working with the microcontrollers, and so I was familiar with the language, and I was assembly language programmer for that project. And this device was eventually, we got it on the market. We got, there's 21 patents. You can look my name up if you want, if you're interested in what the device is. Just go, you just go to the Patent Bureau and look up Manowski and Enumclaw. There's two of us, but only one of us from Enumclaw. And this device was so that you could do remote call forwarding. And very interesting work. And of course, at the same time, the Atari and that project overlapped. So the Atari experience was actually very beneficial for me as far as that job went. I did write Wizard's Revenge, and I've been looking, and there were two Wizard's Revenges. Mine, which was a text adventure, and the other one, which was a graphic adventure. So there you are. Any questions?
Yes, I have questions. Yeah, I saw there was another. Okay. It was funny. There was another Wizards game in that same catalog. It wasn't called Wizard's Revenge. It was called the Wizard's Gold or something like that. And I guess Wizards were on people's mind back in 1981. So, as you said, Wizard's Revenge is a text adventure. I assume you had seen other text adventure games on mainframes or something. Did you?
Yes.
Did you try to just kind of create your own story using that interface, or where did the idea come from? Tell me how that came about.
Well, I had read an article someplace where somebody was talking about writing programs that would write their own files and then refer back to the files. And there was a couple of things that I just wanted to play with, and that was one of the things that I wanted to play with. So in this adventure, each node that you went to was a separate file. And if you went to a node that didn't exist, then you could write the node as you were playing. You could write the node and say what happened and then go back. And when I was done with this program, I just put it in the public domain. And then Atari, the people at Atari saw it and they wanted to sell it. And so then I modified it to make it so that you couldn't just, during play, you couldn't just go in and modify things, and I thought that would make it a little bit safer. But as it turned out, people took my old one and they were modifying, and in fact, there were a lot of corrupted versions of the program out there. But that's why I said, yeah, go ahead and sell it. I made a whopping something like $600 total, but it was a fun project.
Nice.
Yeah, but the main reason for writing it was just to experiment with some of the newer programming concepts that were coming out.
Nice. Right, so I was going to ask about that other version, and I didn't know which came first. I found a version released by a couple of users groups that was simply called Adventure, which I didn't dive deep, but at a glance looks like the same game. So that was the version that came first that could be edited on the fly?
That sounds right. Because I believe that's what I think I just simply called it Adventure. Yeah. So It's interesting because when I got your letter, I have sitting here next to my computer, the listing of Wizard's Revenge, and it's on the old 4-inch wide tape, if you remember that.
Sure.
And paper. And, because that's what the printer was back in those days. And it's sitting here and it's coiled up and I'm using it as a pen holder.
Nice. Nice. That's awesome. Using source code as a pen holder. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, so so you said you made about $600. Did you get any feedback from users or any people writing to you for hints or anything like that?
Yeah, a few. In the program, I believe that in there somewhere there was a thing where I said, if you send me a self-addressed stamped envelope, I'll answer any questions that you have. And I got, I suppose maybe about 10 queries. One of the things that I got a couple complaints on was, if you were stuck or something, you could just type in suicide or kill myself, and that would end the game. Mm-hmm. And so some people said, well, this is, I didn't like this, but they didn't send me the self-addressed stamped envelope, and I would have told them how to take that out. I had already figured that out, how to a simple correction they could have made to the program to just say quit instead. But nobody would send me the envelope, so I didn't send them the solution.
They wanted to complain. They didn't want help. They just
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Did you get any feedback when you submitted it to Atari Program Exchange? Did they have any feedback for you? Did they need any changes made? You said they approached you. Is that right?
Correct. The only thing that when I submitted the version to them was somebody had come up with a program where you could create your own font, and I was using that because that was one of the things I wanted to experiment with. But he had copyrighted this program, and so when I submitted it, I pulled that out and just used the regular font because I didn't know whether or not I'd be infringing on his copyright. Mm-hmm. And that was their only complaint, was that they thought that the font that I used was much more interesting than just the regular one. But when I pointed out that I was using, that was written using some other copyrighted software, they agreed that, yeah, it's probably better not to use it.
Yeah, I had noticed that the original user group version had that font. Frankly, I found the Wizard's Revenge version with the regular Atari font easier to read, but there was certainly some style to the font that you had in the first place.
Yeah.
Did you write any other programs, either published or unpublished?
Not published. I have continued to write. In fact, I'm sitting here in front of my computer now working on a jigsaw puzzle program that I wrote for my wife. And so I continue to program even now. I use Visual Studio and program in C#. But I haven't, except for the stuff that I've done for people working in a few cases, writing programs that eventually went into other products like the remote call forwarding stuff. I haven't done anything commercially. My mother was always after me to sell some of my stuff, and I kept telling her that it was too much trouble and I didn't need the money. So,
were Ataris involved at all in that remote call forwarding thing that you were talking about?
No, that was done using microcontrollers, and it was fun work. They could only you could only have 2K of RAM with them, but that was not enough for what we were doing. The idea man kept adding more and more features, and we ended up with having 4 banks of 2K, and we did bank switching, which was one of the more interesting parts of the project, because I had to figure out how to put routines, where to put routines so that they could get used when that bank was up.
So did you play adventure games?
Oh yeah, still do. I'm a big World of Warcraft fan, and yeah.
Nice. Cool. So I haven't played your game to the end. Would you say it was easy, medium, difficult?
Oh, I wouldn't say it was difficult. If you keep playing it, you'll learn, because it's just the amount of variable in there is just about zero. There was some variation in there, but for the most part, you could figure out which paths to take to get you where you wanted to go if you played it enough times. But so I would say medium.
And then what? You were using your Atari, and then you eventually just moved on to bigger and better machines, I assume?
Yeah. I switched over to the PC and then just kept going with it. In fact, my latest machine is just a few months old. So I'm staying up, stay fairly much with high-end machines, and to me, this is fun. So
sure,
I enjoy them.
So there's no Atari on your desk anymore, huh?
No, there isn't. No.
Nice. All right. What haven't I asked you about that time that I should have?
I don't know. I think that's pretty much about it. I was out of the Navy by the time the Atari came out, so I got out in '78, and the work that I did in the Navy, of course, there was a lot of assembly language work that I did there. I eventually worked up to where I was working on a UNIVAC. Again, still with paper tape input. A lot of fun work back then because I had access. The machine that I was working on, I could come in at night and do whatever I wanted to do on it. So I got a lot of good experience. And in fact, when I had my Sphere computer, you had to enter in machine language. You had to enter your code in machine language. So I actually wrote an assembler for it.
Wow.
But then, of course, they went out of business eventually, and that one came out before I got out of the Navy. It was right close to the end, so it was late '70s when that machine came out, when the kit came out. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I was working for a company that took the old All-Care computer and made a business machine out of it. And so I was both the electronic tech, computer tech, and programmer for that machine.
Did it all.
Programming and I was programming that one in Fortran.
Wow.
And that business machine had one of the big platter hard drives that could hold a whole 5 megabytes.
Wow. You're never going to fill that up.
Yeah.
Well, I hadn't heard of the Sphere computer, and I Googled it here while we were talking, and it looks like a beautiful machine. I'm glad you got yours working. Looks like fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a blog called Gaming After 40, and he does playthroughs of old adventure games. And he last year, 2015, he played Wizard's Revenge, and his summary comment was. Says, Wizard's Revenge is certainly not a standard adventure game, has some odd behaviors and few bugs, but as what I surmise is an attempt to produce a more RPG-like, role-playing game-like, loosely structured experience. It's not bad. The map is very large, and I have to think that other paths to the ending are possible. At least the design presents a greater illusion of choice than most adventure games of the time. As far as I can determine, this is the only game Max Manowski ever published, so we don't have any other examples of his approach to the genre compared to this one, but I enjoyed wandering through the expansive, if largely plot-free adventure game. Yeah,
and the bugs that were in it he probably had one of those versions where somebody had modified something, because mine was bug-free when I put it out.
Well, the version that I tested this morning, it worked sort of, but then when I typed inventory, it crashed. So I think I had one of the buggy versions. Do you have a known good version around that we could get out there so that we have?
Well, I'll tell you what I would have to do. I would have to take this roll of paper that's sitting holding my pens and unwind it and start retyping it in.
Do you have a scanner? If you're willing to scan it, then I'm sure someone else would do the typing.
Yeah, but it's a roll of paper, so I'd have to scan it in several sections.
Sure.
And I'll tell you, the ink is somewhat faded on it, so I can still read it. The easiest thing to do would probably be just to go ahead and retype it. And it's, if I did that, would you just want it in the old BASIC?
If you did that, if you sent it to me as an email message, an ASCII, whatever, we can move it to back to an Atari very easily.
All right, I'll tell you what I'll do. Since I'm just kind of looking for a new project anyway, I can probably do that without too much trouble. It'll take some time.
I don't want to force you to do a project you don't want to do. But if you're
no, I'll tell you, that's why this roll is sitting here, because someday I'm going to get around to typing it up and maybe rewriting it in C#. And so it's not a project that I wouldn't have. Well, maybe I would have died first, but I don't. It was a project that's on my list.
All right.
So yeah, I can do that. Now it may be a while.
Sure.
But I'll work on. I'm retired, so I don't have a lot of stuff to do anyway, and this is where I spend most of my time is in front of my machine. So
nice.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
I don't think so. Yeah, one more. If you could send a message to the Atari computer users that still exist, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
Wow, that's interesting. My first thought is move on. I think that there's a certain hobby aspect to having the old machines, but my personal experience is going back is really going backwards. You're going back to systems that were really. I mean, at the time they had a lot of capability and they were really fun, but eventually they became antiquated. And now I'm a model railroader and a steam, so I can understand that aspect of going back and enjoying what was fun at one time. But for me, I don't think that I would enjoy the Atari anymore after having been on the higher end machines. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Sure.
Yeah. And I've even thought about that. I've even thought about getting one of the old machines or something just for nostalgia purposes and looking at it. But knowing me, I'd probably play with it for a day, enjoy myself, and then I'd put it in a closet.
Well, I thank you for your time. I think I have what I need.
Okay. All right. And I'll go ahead and start working on this listing, and then I'll send it to you so it's not on a piece of 4-inch wide paper roll.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. Have a good day and enjoy yourself.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.